Up next, a discussion on emerging treatment models in mental health. Please welcome Christian Angermayer, founder and chairman Atai Beckley, founder and chairman Enhanced Games, and Matt Zorn, Deputy General Counsel for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. I've been instructed to tell everyone to take their seats. Hope everyone didn't have too many carbs. So anyway, I'm really excited to be here with Christian Angermayer. We're here to talk about psychedelics, and Christian is one of the first people, really a pioneer, to help psychedelics become medicines that can help heal folks with mental health conditions, which is a cause near and dear to my heart. And frankly, he's one of the most dynamic individuals I've ever met. So Christian, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Great pleasure.
And just tell me about yourself.
Whoa, this is a broad question. But in this context, as you might hear, I have an accent. So I'm German-born, though living a little bit in New York. And I'm the founder of Atai Life Sciences. And we're on a mission to bring back various so-called psychedelics, actually bring them back, because they had been therapeutics in the last century, into the medical world. So we don't want to make them, it's not cannabis for anybody who hasn't sort of really read about it. We don't want to make them consumer legal, but we're going through all the FDA processes, very classic, like any other medication is, but with the aim, and we're very close, to bring them back for treatment of various mental health issues like depression, anxiety, addiction, actually sort of dissolve addiction of other drugs, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so on.
Cool. Well, and I wanted to hit on something that you just said, which is you're kind of differentiating psychedelics from other drugs. And one of the things that I also think is really cool is you've never had a drink, you've never taken a recreational drug other than coffee, to the extent that that's recreational, but you have had psychedelics.
Yes.
And you're very public about that.
Yes.
And so what are psychedelics? Like, how are they different? Could you just explain why, as far as your living, you treat them differently?
Well, I mean, the story was like, I really decided when I was very young to not touch any recreational drug for personal reasons. I have the luck, I would say, I realized early I was always very happy. I don't think I'm dumb, so I was like, okay, something is right up there, and I'm very happy about that, so let's not jinx it. And then I had actually a dinner which was kind of forced upon me by a friend, and which I don't like, because like if you never drink alcohol, actually you realize how prevalent alcohol is in our society, and people make jokes and they're trying to push you into it, which is insane, by the way, if you scientifically look at alcohol, which is scientifically one of the worst toxins to intake. But luckily in this case, friends were joking at a dinner and were like, oh, here is a very famous neuroscientist, this was 2013, and he can tell you that you could drink a glass of champagne with the birthday person and not die. I was like, I know that, I just don't want it, like, don't push me. But we got into a conversation, and at the end of the evening, I had learned that this very famous neuroscientist was one of the last person to really still do science and research on psychedelics, which I want to say again, because it's very sad. The image maybe some people might still had, they had been a medical therapeutic in the 50s and 60s, and then for only like political reasons, it was actually the time when the government back then wanted to blame the hippie generation, which sort of did them recreationally, but like it was still a medical drug, like much better than, for example, alcohol. Yeah, and then a whole sort of vilification started. So this guy was still doing research, told me all about it, but I was like, look, and he was like making the point, look, in a medical context, they have a very low to no risk, but they have the upside of curing depression, anxiety, addiction, which is a big problem in our society. We had yesterday, we had Veterans Day here in the US, which is one of the most affected populations of various mental health issues. But my answer was like, I don't have a mental health issue. I am happy. I don't want to be more happy. It's fine. And luckily, this guy was very persistent because he wanted me to support his research. We're talking about 2013. And then 1 year later, I was with friends who were actually knowledgeable about it, which is really important because one of the reasons why we want to bring back these substances into the medical system is that I deeply believe they have to be taken with a healthcare professional together. So these are not recreational drugs. Yeah, these are not party things. Like, these are medications which even shouldn't be taken as a prescription drug, so not to be taken at home, but with a therapist. So that's what I had then 2014. It would be a long story why I did it, because I really didn't want to, but at a very short version, I'm personally, I am religious, so there was something which told me to do it. And it was hands down the single most important thing, positive thing I've ever done. And then I was like, I am in biotech, and maybe I forgot to say that. I started a biotech company when I was 20 with my 2 professors, all credit to them, but it's a $70 billion public company now. We invented what is called RNAi technology, which is a very big sector. Again, they invented it, I rode along. But so I understand science, and that was the point when I had sort of both the data, which was still there. I mean, you can go online, you see all the medical data of the 50s and 60s, plus my N of 1 personal experience. I was like, this has to come back into the medical world, and that's when the journey started.
And so you founded Atai shortly after all of that, but these compounds were very taboo in biotech, not just because of the baggage that psychedelics has, but also the regulatory landscape. Is there something that convinced you that you would be able to navigate that regulatory landscape to bring these into the medical system?
It was 2 things. The one is sort of the, I would say, passive conviction, how I would call it. Like, I deeply believe in it, and I also think if you look at the world we're living in, and if you look at the stats, like, it's not like mental health issues are the #1 problem in terms of people affected, in terms of costs for the healthcare system, and it's also one of these issues where we all know people affected. We all know people with depression. We all know people who are addicted to various substances, meaning here in the US, the opioid epidemic is horrible. Like, so it's something I think this was my first thing, was like there was this sort of individual or subjective thing, it has to be done. And at the very beginning, I didn't even know how. Like, I was like, okay, but like it cannot be that we have such a sort of bad epidemic in mental health and we have nothing. And we really, at the moment, if you look at SSRIs, whatever, they don't really work. Yeah, they have horrible side effects. So it cannot be that for the #1 problem in healthcare, we wouldn't have a sort of alternative or new treatment modalities. But secondly, I have to say, we had very early meetings with the FDA. We're talking now 2016 and 17, and they were always very supportive. Through all administrations, yeah, they were very clear, and I agree with them. They told us, we want this as a medical treatment under the supervision of doctors and healthcare providers. But if you go this route, we're very supportive, and they have been very supportive since we started, till like some weeks ago when we got breakthrough therapy designation for 1 more compound.
So I want to focus on that for a moment, because a big thing that we always talk about is safety, right? Which is there's a tremendous upside to these potentials. We're talking about the fact that these drugs, we're talking about the fact that they could sort of heal treatment-resistant cases, fewer side effects than SSRIs, but the setting and the infrastructure around the deployment of these medicines really matters. What would you like to see the government do to ensure that, you know, if or when these medicines are approved, that there's it administered in a very safe, controlled way, so that we avoid what I think we all know are the potential adverse effects of these compounds?
To say, I mean, the good thing is in our clinical studies, and we finished phase 3 with psilocybin, we finished phase 2b for 5-MeO-DMT, so we really know already a lot, both about the efficacy and side effects, and I can say the side effect profile is very gentle, very, very little, if done, again, within the medical system, with a healthcare provider together. So one important thing is, I would say 2 questions always to politics. The one is like, it's not political at all. So when my politics or politician friends asked me, can we help? I was like, no, because like, it's science. Now in this case, like, I want psychedelics to be treated like any other therapeutic, made something for cancer, something for Alzheimer, whatever. You have here in America, I can say that as a foreigner who works here and loves the country, is like the FDA, and I'm not saying that because maybe some FDA people are in the audience, I really believe it, I've said it since 10 years, it's the gold standard for how you approve medical drugs. Sometimes I'm, as a biotech entrepreneur, couldn't it be a little bit faster? So we could talk about some improvements, but like the quality the FDA is putting on any drug, not psychedelics only, like on anything is amazing, and it gives people the security that once a drug is approved, we know that it's efficacious and we know like any potential side effect profile. So what I'm saying is like, let's leave psychedelics in this sort of part of the system, in the FDA system. We're out, and I'm very happy because our drugs are so good that it's easy for us to prove, all of, we surpassed the hurdle for what is an approvable mental health drug by far, like by multifold. So it's not a political decision, it's an FDA decision. But second, where the government can help a lot then, once these psychedelics are approved, and we are shortly before, like psilocybin, of a company, Compass, which we span out of Atai, is literally coming on hopefully next year. Again, let's talk about veterans. Again, I'm always saying that as a semi-outsider, like your healthcare system is complicated and not everybody has the insurances, whatever. And again, especially, I think the veterans, they serve this country, so they should get paid for the support, what they need. So help rolling out the infrastructure, help rolling out to bringing these substances then to the people who really need it.
Yeah, and to that end, I mean, I think we're assuming some background familiarity on psychedelics. We're talking now about how it's safe when administered in the right settings, but I mean, could you help me paint a picture for the audience of like what we're talking about? In other words, what are we talking about when we talk about the medical administration of psychedelics? Because, you could picture a number of things, but we're talking about a very specific thing here. So could you just paint the audience a picture for that?
It's very specific, but also not so unusual that you have various substances in the healthcare system which you have to take under the supervision of a doctor. For example, nobody would say, oh, chemotherapy, let's just take it home. No, you go to a day clinic and you take your treatment. And the same, it will be with psychedelics. So you go to your healthcare provider, to your doctor, therapist, then you have the session. So as long as the respective psychedelic works with them, we're talking here about, for psilocybin, the first in line to be approved is around about 4 to 6 hours, how long it takes. And then we have some shorter acting, which is obviously then commercially even more viable and even easier, like 2-hour psychedelics coming up as next in line. So, but you are with your healthcare provider while you're having your psychedelic session, and then you go home after. By the way, also to just show like it's actually more common than people think, there is one medication which is already approved, which is not in a chemical sense or in the chemical definition as psychedelic, but has psychedelic-like properties, and I would even say psychedelic light because it's weaker. But there is a therapeutic from Johnson & Johnson called Spravato. So Spravato is a nasal spray ketamine, which roundabout takes 2 hours from onset to discharge of the patient. It's very effective. Our psychedelics have proven in the clinical studies so far to be even more effective, and you only need to take them once, while Spravato needs to be taken 8 times, which is obviously a bigger burden on the healthcare system, but at the moment it's the only thing which is out there. But it is already there, so it's actually a multi-billion-dollar revenue drug. Like more and more doctors are applying it, which is also great for us because that already builds out actually the infrastructure so that when our psychedelics then come to market, we have sort of the Spravato build out infrastructure. We have doctors who know it. So it's not as uncommon actually as you might think. You can go tomorrow and get for depression or addiction, use Spravato treatment. It's just weaker than what we will have.
And I think that's a really important thing that you're kind of pointing out, which is these substances, or the idea of taking a mind-altering substance in a controlled setting with a physician, that's not a new thing right now. We have that with Johnson & Johnson's drug. There's off-label ketamine. Like, this isn't a new concept. And then, on top of that, in terms of the regulatory process, like these drugs are being treated very similarly to other compounds. And again, recently the FDA released the complete response letter on MDMA, and kudos, because I think there was a lot of, in the psychedelic community, some distrust of the FDA, and I was told that they had to move some mountains to be able to disclose not just that CRL, but a lot of CRL, which creates transparency into the process. But do you think there's something else the government could be doing to build trust with psychedelics, that these are going to be handled without either favor or without sort of discrimination?
Exactly. So actually my one point is, and anybody in politics always says, oh my God, this is unusual that somebody says that to us. But I always say, one thing, don't do us a favor. Because I fully recognize that there are people, maybe even in the audience, and you don't dare to say it now because we're having this nice discussion, but there are people who unfortunately still are kind of a victim of the smear campaign in the 70s and 80s. And the only way to overcome it is to do everything extra properly. So when we started Atai and Compass, we were like, look, if the FDA says we have to do 200 people in a study, let's do 250. And you can trust me, I'm a biotech entrepreneur. I really don't want to spend more money than I have to. But in this case, I was like, the substances deserve it, and we need to really sort of silence any potential criticism by data. That is how you do it in biotech. So this is why all the studies we're doing are all a little bit bigger, a little bit more expensive, but it's good because we prove it once and for all, again, that in the right medical setting, we have the potential to cure mental health issues with very little side effects. So I don't want any shortcuts, because even if it's meant nicely, I think it could backfire, because people could say, oh, it's because whatever, So, but again, we are very close, by the way. Again, the FDA said last week, I think it was about Compass, that most likely psilocybin is going to be approved next year. And there is still a lot of sort of stuff we can, again, you as a government can support to build out, again, especially for people not covered by traditional healthcare systems like veterans. There's a lot we can do together then once these substances are approved in post-data collection. Because also at the moment, a lot of people look at our pipeline, and most of our therapeutics, we are researching, the lead sort of indication is always treatment-resistant depression. Why? Because it's so bad. Treatment-resistant depression means these people are really a mess. They said they have tried everything. They normally tried 2 or 3 other drugs, didn't work out. So, and we've shown that this sort of very, very sort of heavily affected people, we can turn with one single session, with a success rate more than 50%. However, there are 20 more indications we can do, because it's really mental health is a very broad spectrum. By the way, if you I guess most people have children, parents here in the room, the whole social media stuff, we have very amazing results for anorexia. So a lot of girls are affected by any form of body dysmorphia, which, by the way, most children have in the meantime, because they're getting a completely unrealistic image of their body on Instagram and other stuff. So mental health is very broad, and there, for example, and we're talking, it was a good question, because we want to prove that as well, and there we can do a lot together in how the FDA allows us to collect data in sort of the post-approval phase.
So, and there are lots of different compounds and lots of different companies. There's MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder. There's some compounds. One thing I find extremely interesting, we started off by talking about you don't do certain addictive drugs. Well, some folks are investigating psychedelics for addiction, because the compounds are anti-addictive.
And so psychedelics are zero addictive, full stop. We know that. So it can't happen that you get addicted to them. But to the contrary, psychedelics, all of them have anti-addiction properties. And for example, we were researching one of the strongest and powerful psychedelics, which is called Ibogaine. And Ibogaine in early studies, it's in our pipeline, it's one of the earlier compounds, but Ibogaine in early studies has shown an 80-90% success rate to cure opioid addiction, which is one of the worst or the strongest addiction in one single session. So definitely not addictive, actually curing addiction. And let me maybe one more point, because that's really like mental health, not only psychedelics, but like mental health is sort of my core passion, because I always I come back to how I felt when I was told about psychedelics. I have these enormous luck. I don't know why. I think I credit my parents, and I grew up on a farm village. Like, I am always fairly happy, and I think that's how it should be. Like, I think we should all be happy, and we're not. Like, something is out in our world. If I would show you on a screen, I should do it next time, I would show you charts over the last 10 years of depression, of anxiety, again, of any mental health issue, of anorexia, whatever, and I would not tell you what it is, and I would ask you what you think it is, and only give you the clue it's something in healthcare, you would all say it's an infectious disease, because this is how all these charts look like. So we have to acknowledge, as a society, as a community, that mental health is skyrocketing, and there is a reason. Like, I can just speculate. I think it's a mix, or it's practically the world we're building. By the way, I invest also in tech. Like, I'm part of that world building, but like, we have to acknowledge that the world we're building, I think, is terribly bad for our mental health, and it's getting. And we, by the way, because of AI and all of that, we're just getting started with it to going into a time of massive disruption. And every single time you look in history, we have not coped well as a species with massive disruption in a short period of time. And we are about to encounter the biggest disruption ever in the shortest period of time. And every single time, mental health has collapsed and has produced very, very, very bad outcomes, up to wars, societal unrest, whatever. And for the first time, I think we have a tool in front of us about to be approved in the medical system, which can really help us sort of combat that mental health crisis, which is already there, but unfortunately, I believe, will, from an environmental perspective, only get worse.
So we're approaching the end here, so just quick lightning round. I've got three more questions here. So number one, these sound great. They sound like the bee's knees here, but it almost sounds a little too good to be true. Could just very quickly tell me, like, why is it the case? Like, why? I'm a doubter. I don't believe this. Convince me.
Well, it's like, I know this, I want to say, because I want to make a half a joke, but I don't get it in English, like, because like follow the science was not really like the thing here, but like it is, like it's the data, I have the biggest conviction. I invested 120 million of my own capital. We raised $1 billion, I'm doing this since 10 years, and every single data we produce, set of data, is confirming what we just said in a medical setting, very, very little side effects, and very big upside. And I think that's just worth it. And it's not, so I don't want to convince anybody of you by me saying it. Like, sort of, you can go online, look up our data, phase 3, and again, in the best sort of gold standard setting in the world, which is the FDA. So that it's just a fact. It's not like my opinion. What is my opinion, and I hope you share it, is that we need it, because you just need to look in your own circles, that mental health is the #1 problem, and we have to do something.
So we're at our limit, but just very quickly, what else are you working on? And give me one sentence that you want to be remembered by.
Well, one sentence is definitely psychedelics. I hope Brian is, I think, here, or at least he's going to be on stage, I think, later, who's a good friend, Brian Johnson. I'm in his camp. I also think we're going to redefine the next 10, 20 years our life expectancy. So I hope I'm going to live for very long, and that moment is not coming for soon. But if ever that moment comes where people talk about me because I passed away, I want to be remembered for psychedelics. I think that is my contribution to the world. So otherwise I'm investing a lot in tech and biotech. We have other cool stuff. The one thing, because there is an athletics panel later, I hope you all zoom in. The other big company I started big, we're going to get big. I started a company called Enhanced Games, which is the first sporting event where we're truly transparent, because the Olympics is a farce, because 40% of all athletes dope, and this is what the Olympics are saying, not me. So it's not a real thing, but we think we're living in an age of science, we're living in an age of data, so we allow, at the Enhanced Games, performance-enhancing drugs, and I'm coming back to what I said before about psychedelics, as long as they're FDA approved. So it's not on everything goes. It's, again, based on science, medical drugs we know together with a doctor. But I think we're going to redefine how we think about performance-enhancing drugs and about sporting achievement, so which is on the 24th of May next year in Las Vegas. So either tune in or be there. And otherwise, be happy, because that's really, I think, the reason why we're here is to be happy and make other people happy.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Christian.
Thank you.